So, starting with the guiding principles, what you need to keep in mind when you're organizing a brevet. Divya covered this, of course, in the morning. She had a slide of this as well. Starting with ensuring the safety of the riders, yes, upholding the integrity of randonneuring as a sport in India, enforcing the BRM rules and regulations as laid out by AIR and ACP, building the community of randonneurs with an understanding of non-profit activity. Yeah, this and all actions and decisions to be taken in the interest of randonneuring. Some prerequisites that we expect from our organizers. We always have a lot of enthusiastic people even contact us that we want to organize a brevet. So basics that we look at is you should be a randonneur yourself. Yeah. As Divya mentioned also, there was someone from a motorcycle club contacting to organize brevets. It doesn't work like that. We want our organizers to be randonneurs themselves, and it's not that over time you should no longer be riding and just organizing. You should ride at least a brevet a season, so you also stay in touch with the rider base. Other basics: be a resident of India, be over 18 years of age. Most importantly, you should have that basic ability to just read all the rules and regulations and all the protocols we have in place, all the procedures, and be able to again in turn disseminate that information to your rider base. And of course, now that we've become very tech heavy on automating a lot of the processes involved for organizing brevets, so you need to have proper internet connection and be net savvy. So many organizers in turn do rope in ride responsibles. So when this is a key factor, please keep in mind when you are proposing. We have an option on the club dashboard now for you to add a ride responsible. So please don't, again propose someone who, you're just getting his name up there for us to handle. You may have 10, 15 officials and volunteers helping you out in organizing a brevet. But when you propose a ride responsible to AIR on our site, please make sure that ride responsible is net savvy, understands basics, how to upload the results, because the responsibilities for the ride responsible is pertaining to the site. So, of course, we'll have a tech session tomorrow going over all the new features, existing features, upgrades to the site, plans, future plans as well for the site. But that's another requirement that we have. So starting for organizing a brevet, planning, overall planning beforehand. So most of you know our BRM calendar starts from 1st November to 30th October. That's how the season goes. So Divya will be having a session on how to plan BRM, entire calendar of BRM events. That will be a separate session, so try to hold your questions for that later. But I'll be covering, once you have that plan in place, I'll be covering what you go on to do from there on. Oops. You have to be loud. Please go ahead.
Come back.
I'll be back. first step, in my view, when you're planning a brevet, is setting a basic route. You have your calendar in place, you know your next upcoming event is set for a certain distance on a specific date. So, for that distance, what would be the ideal route? You are expected. So, you need to do basically a plan of routes, chalk out a basic plan where you likely want to have this brevet on what kind of a route. Look into difficulty level. For example, maybe beginning of your season, you have a 200 scheduled. You are expecting more new riders, new to the format. You might want to set an easy, difficulty level is less. So more of introducing people to this sport. You can set, yeah. We often set intermediate to hard levels for the longer distances. Also for certain unique, very unique rides. I'll go into that a bit later. And during the years we have PVP, LEL. You're designing your calendar and your routes, maybe to prepare for some of your riders, to give them that opportunity to prepare for those brevets. So you might want to set routes probably which may in part mirror the kind of terrain they may face elsewhere. Certain unique rides that we've organized in Baroda, we have one ride, it's a BRM 200, which is, I would say it's a more difficult, challenging ride because we've got control points at hilltops. There's a lot of elevation gain, at times there's some rolling terrain, and some of these control points are a bit difficult to reach. It's called the Mataji challenge. There are a couple of control points you need to get, you need to get to by a certain time. Of course, that's all set by the system. Certain routes we've set, which is more, scenic approach. You're going across a water reservoir, or basically try to. That's part of what the route recce is all about. You're trying to figure out. It's not just always about finding good roads. See, our brevet distances range from 200 to 1200 kilometers. We have to accept the fact to a certain extent in our country. Even in Gujarat, I cannot set a 200 kilometer route without a single bad patch. So that is expected, but apart from that basic requirement, other things, these are some of the other things you need to think of when trying to design basic routes. Yeah. Once you have that in mind, we'll be covering this aspect on how to add this route. Once you design your route, you've set your route, you obviously have to submit that route to AIR for approval and upload the Q sheet on the site. We'll be having a separate session as part of our tech session tomorrow morning, wherein we'll go over those details, those aspects, how exactly you will add those, the new route, and some tips and tricks that I also follow. So moving on with your planning, next comes your budgeting for the ride. Yeah. So some of the costs that you have to take into account when you're organizing a brevet, starting with the route recce. As Divya mentioned earlier also in the first half, these are certain first, especially when you're first starting off, you're a new club, these are some out of your own pocket expenses, doing route recce, setting, finding new routes and setting them. Moving on, you need to look at what kind of facilities you are providing to the riders. So essentially, brevets are self-supported. Yes, there's not a whole lot you are expected to provide, but certain basics. Support is only allowed at control points. So often ride organizers will have some food and hydration available at control points, many times at a turnaround point. If it's a route is straight going out and coming back, 100 kilometers one way, 100 kilometers coming back, for example, for a BRM 200. So that control point becomes a halfway point or a turnaround point. So the ride marshal may set up over there and have food and hydration available for all the riders. So obviously that would work into your costing. Then for some of the longer formats, the organizer is expected to just provide some basic drop-back facility, often for BRM 600, BRM 1000, 1200, the longer formats where there's overnight riding journey across 2 days, 3 days. So you might pick a place, a hotel or a guest house along the road that's not too far removed from the route, and have the riders tag their bags and just have it in your car and make those drop bags available at the specific control points. Yeah. Then some clubs may consider having paid volunteers. It's possible. I mean, sometimes you don't find. When a club first starts out, of course, there's a whole lot of enthusiasm. Friends and family also get involved. It's very typical. We've seen that happen a lot. And then, as time passes, sometimes people get busy. People move on to other things. It might happen. You might find less enthusiastic offers to volunteer. That's when you might start considering this option. Yeah. Then other basic costs that go into our organizing. For the ride marshal, you might have 1, 2, or 3 ride marshals. So we do take into consideration reimbursing them for their fuel costs and other travel costs, yeah, toll, miscellaneous expenses, and then of course your basic stationery, printing, all your brevet cards, and sometimes some club organizers also print and issue AIR rider number tags. So all that you need to consider into your costing. So just to give a brief idea, AIR doesn't really have a fixed guideline or a rule per se on what you should charge as a brevet fee to a rider. So I'm just giving you a brief idea. At Baroda, what we charge. For a BRM 200, we charge 500 rupees, ranging to a BRM 1200, which goes up to 2500 rupees. Yeah. And basically, the idea is this is a self-supported ride, so you're not expected to provide a whole lot of facilities and then jack up to charging 2000 rupees just for a BRM 200 ride. Yeah. So do see, that was the whole point of the earlier slide, to show you typically what are the expenses faced. So keep your costs low so that your BRM fee charged to the rider is also reasonable. Like I said, many people are attracted to this format because it doesn't cost an arm and a leg. If you look at supported races and other ultra racing formats, one event can cost you upwards of 30,000, 50,000. Yeah, here you're coming to participate in this format. Your brevet fee, you pay 1,500. Okay, you're going by yourself. You don't have a whole team behind you. So just your individual travel cost to a particular event. So keeping that in mind, again going back to what we spoke earlier in the morning also, it's a not-for-profit sport and organization. So you need to work within that framework. Yeah. Apart from fees, obviously, the brevet fees, we have the medal fees. So what AIR is charging to the clubs, which existing clubs know, new clubs may note, we charge 500 rupees per medal to the clubs. Organizers can typically charge upwards from 550 to 650. This we permit, no issues, primarily because many of the clubs may collect payments in other formats where there may be, like Explorer, you may have some transaction fees that you are incurring. Of course, the bigger expense is if many clubs organize medal ceremonies, so there is a cost associated with that as well. In Baroda also we charge 600 per medal, and that additional 100 rupees helps me take care of the medal ceremony expenses, or for outstation riders if I need to courier them their brevet cards and medals. So of course distribution is again a separate presentation I'll be going over. I think that's scheduled for tomorrow. So certain guidelines on what to do, do's and don'ts. So yeah, those are also expenses that you would have to take into consideration. So that is something you can load your costing onto medals, so that everything is not loaded onto the brevet fees and just bloating that up. Yes. Yes, of course. Your fees, your club fees to AIR, yes. Annual fees, you have a security deposit, and per event fees 200 rupees per event. Can we? Right. So the next step in your event planning is you need to activate the event on the AIR site. Yes. The precise procedure going about it step by step, we'll again be covering it in the tech presentation, all navigation through the site and everything tomorrow. But what you need to keep in mind is please activate the event well in advance, at least 3 to 4 weeks, so that especially outstation riders get enough time to plan their trip. The whole idea is to accumulate all these events on a single portal on AIR. By the way, this system is only there in India. No other country that is hosting randonneuring events has a unifying portal in this manner. So I mean this, yeah, not to such an extension. So really the purpose or the advantage is lost if you are going to be activating your event the same week of the event. Yes, many times on the group chat also I have posted reminders, guys, I mean, like 10-15 events in the month of Feb, and where it's already 1st or 2nd Feb, and many events are yet to be activated that are in the same month. So really that's essential. You never know, I mean, there's someone sitting in Delhi looking for an option to ride in Cochin. They're a registered member on our site. They have access to see what route you have set up, when your event is going to be, if it's if he can fit that into his holiday schedule. Make that option available is what I'm trying to say. So again, since we are a not-for-profit organization, people always, I've had inquiries before, how do we go about promoting, we need, if we get some sponsorship, we can do marketing and all. So in Baroda, what we often do is we'll get in touch with local dailies. We have a few reporter contacts. So we'll give them a nice article talking about the route we are doing, talking about the format of brevets in general. And we'll generally do this before, at least a couple of weeks before the event. So that also helps generate some buzz, apart from usual what most clubs do anyway on Facebook or WhatsApp and other social media mediums for promoting your event. Apart from obviously the event being visible on the ODAX site itself. Yes? Then your next step obviously is to form an event-specific team. Obviously, again, going back to what I said, you need some volunteers, you need a ride marshal. Newer clubs, smaller rider base, often when you're first starting out, you're the club rep, you're the ride marshal, you're donning many roles, but as it goes on further, your ridership is increasing, your rides on the longer formats, you need more team members. Certainly it helps to have that extra set of hands, but you need to be very clear about their responsibilities. You need to assign specific roles to each person. Often, I mean, you may have enthusiastic volunteers, friends and family coming up, but they themselves may not be aware of, again, the rules and regulations. We talked about riders showing up to the start line not having read the rules. But what's worse is you assign responsibilities to an official who is ignorant of our rules. Right? So it's not just about putting the team together, but assigning their duties and informing them what they need to watch out for, what they need to be particular about, what is expected of them. Often now that the community is growing, you'll have neighboring clubs as well. Your route might be going along a neighboring city. Here's a good tip. Often Baroda's events routes might pass by Ahmedabad, so I'll call Vinod and I'll let him know that I have 15 riders heading your way tomorrow, and we might have a control point on the outskirts of Ahmedabad. They'll even come in, meet the riders, help us man the control point. If Vinod's not available, someone else from his team might also come and help us out. Apart from that, obviously, alerting a neighboring club rep also helps to let them know in case there's an emergency, if they're available. If they're not available, they might give you an alternate number who could help you out. So getting ready for event day. By the way, so this is one thing I like to do. I don't know how everyone else does it. I make these nice little Ziploc bags. Often I'll get brevet cards back from riders, drenched in sweat or rain, having been exposed to the elements. So I'll put the cue sheet. Hello. I'll put the cue sheet and the brevet card and maybe some electrolytes in a Ziploc bag and issue these parcels to the riders. Can you? Right, so starting with getting ready for event day, once you close your registrations, obviously, start printing out all your control sheets. You're going to have a separate clipboard for the ride marshal at the start point, who's doing the bike check, and I keep a checklist for the brevet fee in case some of the riders haven't yet paid in advance. I'm collecting at the start point. I'll have that list as well for the marshal. So as he's doing the bike check, he'll collect the brevet fee. For the riders, what you saw in the earlier slide, I generally have those parcels ready, print out the brevet cards and the cue sheets. For the marshals en route, I make a separate clipboard with all the control sheets for every control point. If you're having multiple teams manning different control points, obviously you need to prepare them as separate clipboards, separate sets. Along with that, every control point sheet, if they're separate teams, it must be accompanied by the emergency contacts list and the addresses list. Again, these are available on the sites. Under each event, if you click on downloads, you'll find all these documents there for you to print out. Please keep these available as hard copy. That's why I've mentioned it as printouts for event day. Don't presume, since it's available on the website, you can always go back and look at it online. Why waste a piece of paper? But I'm sorry? Hello. Right. So, yeah, as I said, this is critical. Please have these as hard copy available so that often brevet's control point will be in some ghati area. You're not going to have data connection. You might not be able to access the web. Sometimes volunteers may not be able to get in touch with you to get that list of emergency contacts from you. So, apart from that, of course, this is something you have to develop as part of your route design as well. Along the route, you have a list of possible hospitals, what is there nearby, and list of emergency numbers. Again, going back to what I said, there's a club along your route, have their names and numbers handy, so volunteer knows who to call if there's a problem. Yes? Little bit what Divya touched in the morning, I'll elaborate. Pre-brevet briefing. Again, if you're a fairly new club or you notice in your registration, especially when I see there are 10, 15 first time riders, especially if there are 10, 15 first time riders, what I like to do is I like to have a pre-brevet briefing. Generally it will be on the eve of the event, so if it's 6 a.m. Sunday morning flag off, the briefing will be 7 p.m. on the Saturday evening before it. So that, riders coming from out of town also would have already reached by then. So I have everyone in for this session. So on the pre-brevet briefing, I'll give them a full laid-out orientation on the whole format of brevets, what randonneering is all about, a gist on the randonneering spirit, how this is a self-supported ride, what are do's and don'ts, common mistakes that first-timers make. Yes, then of course you can. It's not necessary you have to have a pre-brevet briefing only if you are seeing new riders coming. Sometimes it may be a first time you are organizing a BRM 1200, for example. It's a nice long route. You have hardly maybe 10 riders registered for it. You want to have a pre-brevet briefing to give them the whole laydown of the route. This is how we are going to do it. These will be the control points. These will be the drop bag locations. Give them the whole understanding of what you have planned for the event. Then you obviously, when it's a big event, you have maybe 50 to 100 registrations. It would also help to have the pre-brevet briefing to distribute the brevet cards, get the signed waiver forms, because sometimes if you just have riders coming in 30 minutes before the flag off and you need to go through bike check and everything, even issue brevet cards, collect waiver forms, it can be there could be some pandemonium there. Then you could also create, already many organizers are doing this, creating a WhatsApp group specific to that event. So you can disseminate information before the ride, even during the ride, or after the ride. So what I like to do, if you can look through your books, there's a section on communication.
33.
Yeah, 33, page 33. So over a period of time, again from experience, knowing the typical problems and frequently asked questions that riders have, although almost all of this knowledge base is available on the site, like we discussed earlier also, people may not read, just tick yes, yes, yes and just submit, and really people don't absorb, and rather than me just being firm on event day and just saying these are the rules. So what I've developed are certain typical messages in my notes app, which I just tend to copy paste and transmit on the WhatsApp messages one at a time, few hours apart on the WhatsApp group. Generally I create the WhatsApp group a couple of days in advance. It will have a link to the rules and regulations. I'm not sharing the entire rules and regulations on text. Yeah, but some of the typical things, mandatory bike check. Often, especially when people are traveling, they might forget to pack something. So the mandatory bike check and the recommended items list I will post on the group, just so people have it handy, available. They'll see the message, they'll get reminded that, oh, I forgot this. Certain other basic things for the site. Many riders don't even know that their initial email they get of a complex password, system issued password, they've forgotten their password. You can trigger a forgot password, or you can change the password to something that you can easily remember. So I made a message on instructions on how to go, where to go to change your password yourself. Certain basic advisories, like on lights, you'll find typically first few times people don't know what's the best light to have. or they're doing a BRM 400 for the first time, they had lights which had to get to clear BRM 200, 300 for a few hours, but when riding a 400, you are expected to ride throughout the night. They may not have the best kind of lights, so I have a section on lights where I recommended this kind of a light, this kind of brightness for typical Baroda routes. That should suffice. I've advised that avoid using USB rechargeable lights because those tend to run out in just 2-3 hours. I have tail lights which run on AA or AAA batteries. So these kinds of messages, I'll often share photographs of typical reflective vests. So that gives them that visual aid to understand. Otherwise, the first time someone's coming for a brevet, oh, I've got a couple of stripes of reflective material on my jersey, won't that suffice? But by sending them these photographs of randonneurs from previous brevets with their entire bike setup, how the rider number appears back and forth, what kind of different vests there are. There's not just one standardized AIR branded reflective vest that you are required to buy or something. Right? There are different kinds. So I've shared some images I share of those riders. This is how they're set up. So that's
riders find it convenient to ask you.
Rather than
they
bombarding-
send you a photograph and say, "Will this like you?" So we have had such
Right.
it's still not clear because they don't know the technical terms of this app. So we will send visual.
So on event day, minimum 30 minutes prior, you as the organizer should be at the start point, or you've assigned duties to someone else, especially people doing the bike check. Please you yourself should report on time. Yes, as soon as riders start checking in, you are expected to issue them their brevet cards and cue sheets. Here again, I'd like to insist you must give hard copy of the cue sheet. Don't presume you transmitted on WhatsApp. Some people transmit the cue sheet image file on WhatsApp, or just say this is the link. You can see the link on the AIR site. We expect you to give that hard copy of the cue sheet. Yes, and it has to be the same cue sheet that is uploaded on the AIR site. The site cannot have one cue sheet and then on event day you are something you made in Excel and printed it out and you are giving it to people. Then obviously you issue the brevet cards. You have to get the mandatory bike check done. The checklist itself has all those items that you need to tick off: helmet, sign, waiver form, lights front and back with spare batteries, reflective vest. Yes, the same mandatory bike check also has the option to put in your ATM or debit card number. We always collect the first 4 digits and last 4 digits because inexperienced organizers and marshals won't realize that certain ATMs like SBI ATMs, they'll punch out the first 4 or 5 digits of the ATM card, whereas many other banks like BOB will print out the last 4 digits. So we always ensure that we note the first 4 digits and last 4 digits. This way, I don't have the middle 8 digits. Riders can feel secure. I don't have their full card number, and at the same time,
Because we have
I'm
access,
covered.
we have access to the website, the date of birth, and everything else.
Then, as the bike check, all this is going on, you could also start giving a brief talk. Just a very quick rundown, a toolbox talk, what we call it. There could be some last minute issue. For example, there is some diversion 50 kilometers away, or like one time I had to just tell people, as you are leaving the city, there's a new hole that's dug up. there is a slight diversion. Please be careful. We're starting at 6 a.m. It's still not daybreak. So it's just advising the riders something specific last minute. Things that you may not have been able to cover in a pre-brevet briefing, or you may not have had a pre-brevet briefing. Use this opportunity because all the riders are there, reached at the start line. Introduce the marshals. On event start, of course, we have the option of spot registrations. Here I wanted to touch this because we've had organizers allow spot registrations for first-time riders. Here I advise you to please use the facility. We are giving you the facility of spot registration even on the site, but use this option for experienced riders. Again, going back to rules and regulation, people just showing up on the start line are ignorant of the rules. They'll end up drafting someone, one rider one time just held the hand of a motorcyclist for a few kilometers. He was spotted, he was photographed, and turned out he was a spot registration, showed up at the start line, rode without having read our rules.
They can only add already registered permanent
members, no? Yeah, but what happens is in the past, after the rider has finished the ride, his membership has gone through, and then you spot register the rider. So the facility is there, but it's ill-advised. With the automation of the payment gateway, it's yeah, but if results are not submitted, membership is taken later, they can be spot registered. So there, I mean, we don't have that control in place, but you're advised not to accommodate first timers as spot registration. I've had this experience as well. So, once bit. Yeah, that's what I mean, a rider quit without having informed the ride marshal. He didn't show up to the finish line, of course, claiming to have finished the ride. But he just didn't know that he was expected to call the ride marshal and inform him that he quit the ride. So, first time on spot registration.
Raghu, I have a question. Why can't you just go away with this concept of spot registration? Because we faced this problem before that we have had riders come, they've done the ride according to the rules, and then later on we have to keep on chasing them. AR number, de do, AR number, de do, and then your ride doesn't get recorded, and then how much can we as organizers?
Alright. So it's your choice also. If you want more, you don't take. Like we don't take sport registration. Our registration is
as a rule. I mean, as an organization, why just promoting this concept?
What happens is that there are some clubs in which they feel that they require to provide this spot registration.
Of course.
A lot of people come, as for example in Pune, so many of our regular riders have been riding for 2-3 years. PVP, everything also. They just will not register in time. They will come, of course, if we make it a rule, then everybody will know. But we kind of.
Sometimes what happens is they would have registered, they would not take a number for 3-4 days.
Can we hold that issue for the Q&A after this event? I'll address that separately. Yeah. Can you go to the next slide? Yeah. Of course, we covered this in the morning exhaustively. On event day, the site will inform you, guys. Excuse me, guys. Up front. So the next point is ensure the underage riders report to the start line with their parent. So possibly you could add this as part of the mandatory bike check when you're going through. We are indicating it on your control sheets now that you have an underage rider if indicated on the sheets. So you need to make sure now that they are accompanied by their parent, not their uncle or some distant relation or a friend.
Punctuality.
Always flag off on time. Baroda, we're very particular. Once you set that culture, you will have riders always reporting for their bike check in time. And once you've flagged off your event, then okay, riders who've come in. No, I don't think so. I have no idea.
Once you flagged off the ride on time, then people who showed up maybe just 2 minutes before flag off time, your flag off time is 6 a.m. Someone shows up at 5:58. Sorry, flag off is not going to be held. No, I'm here before flag off time. That's unacceptable. Reporting time is 30 minutes before flag off. You show up late. We are going to flag off on time. You are required to wait, go through the formality of bike check and everything else, issue debit cards, and then you allow the rider to ride. Yes? Very important, I see a lot of organizers not paying particular attention to riders showing up with safety vehicles. We have the support vehicle policy in place. Again, you might have experienced riders, experienced organizers who are not ensuring this very basic thing. You must insist that there should be prior intimation if you are bringing in a safety vehicle. Again, this is something that I always cover in a pre-brevet briefing. I'll always ask, especially because there are a lot of newcomers, they have their safety concerns, and we do permit for that. We have a policy in place for that reason. But it's essential that it has to be reported to you so you know you have the option to put a volunteer also in that safety vehicle, which I feel you should exercise so that you know what's going on. The safety vehicle policy, please do read it. There's a form also available on the site for you to download, which the rider is expected to fill out, sign, and issue to you. Just as how they sign a waiver form, there's a support vehicle form also that needs to be filled out. So, in fact, it's there in your book. Page number 17.
So those who are not aware, the safety vehicle is a unique thing all around the world, only in India and I think South Africa. So South Africa has issues with safety. This is a very unique thing that our safety commission from France have
this is why we insist for the prior intimation. That's how you then use your personal judgment, as she said, that yes, this route warrants a safety vehicle, or this particular rider, for this particular rider, the safety vehicle is warranted. Yes, you might have a woman rider, even though it is daytime, she's coming for the first time. The route. All your do's and don'ts are given in this format. The safety vehicle may end up being used for support, but very strictly only at the control points. We are very particular about this. We've had safety vehicles show up, and then there was a first time rider late in the night. He's sitting in the car in the middle of the control point. The car is not moving. Bike is being put on the side. He's sitting in the car and drinking water. That's you are taking support. I had to disqualify that rider. You are spotted again claiming ignorance. Oh no, I thought only drafting behind the car is not allowed, or traveling in the car with the bike is not allowed. I'm not moving in the vehicle. No, I am very clearly it is written.
You may not sit or rest in or on the vehicle in between controls. No physical contact between you and your vehicle. That may be misconstrued by another rider. So,
it is there as a safety vehicle, not a support vehicle. But if somebody is in that safety vehicle at the control point, that person may assist you in any way necessary, but only at control points. So you need to educate the riders, showing up with safety vehicles, that prior intimation is necessary, and if they have given you that prior intimation, you need to send them this safety vehicle policy separately and ensure that they've read it. They must sign it as an indication that they've read this.
And this is a problem that we face quite regularly from various clubs about riders flouting to school, turning up to safety vehicles without having informed the officer.
Yes.
Then they protest. Then they write me emails saying, but your wording says may not, which means that you may. And I'm like, no, may not legally means you cannot do it. And if you do it, then we have the right to this one. So, this is something we have had at this point. We did have somebody who's now also recently. Bombay had a big issue back. Then the two riders who had their safety vehicles started to get aggressive with saying, how can you do this? And yeah, look, you have not read the rules. That's all it is. That's the indication.
Two riders,
Sorry.
first
Shall
time.
not. So it is very funny language. Make it shall not.
Well, may not is actually legal term.
Yeah, it
so I
is.
responded to him by saying it is.
You're right, may and shall is the same word.
May not is that.
But the common lingo shall may have written context. So legally I understand what you're saying.
Guidelines for the ride marshal on the event day. You need to monitor the rider's progress, position at various times as best possible. Yes, to ensure their safety and obviously to ensure that they are obeying all rules and regulations. This being a prime example, when you know a rider has brought a safety vehicle, ride marshal needs to be in contact with that safety vehicle's driver to make sure they know that safety vehicle's position as well, to ensure they're following the rules and guidelines. Marshals are there out on the road, so always, first timers, you could advise them what typically mistakes they may, they might be doing, and endurance ride for the very first time, not having done a 200 before, or not even having done 100 before, to ensure they hydrate, things like that, basic information to motivate, riders suffering on the saddle. Most important, no special treatment. You are there to marshal the group as a whole. Even if, although the earlier point I mentioned, you need to ensure safety, but at the same time, you are not there for that one particular rider left behind in the group. You are there to marshal the entire group. Fine, this rider is in this location. Keep in touch once in a while maybe, but you need to be marshalling the entire group, or the section of the route the ride marshal has been allocated to.
Make it clear to them that your marshal vehicles are not there as sweep vehicles to bring them back home if they need. Because we have had this issue where some of the riders assume that our vehicles on the road will pick them up if they decide to be in it. So we tell them in advance, if you be in it, you get back home on your own. Because it's not like we refuse. If somebody happens to be on the road, we pick them up. But
Yes,
if
of course.
there's an emergency which needs to be dealt with, that is a priority. So I'm not going to waste any
Marshalling is the priority there. Yes, I have also had riders DNF on my ride, and I am marshalling. They have had to sit at one place for 2 hours, 3 hours while I go to the turnaround point, clear the riders, and then on the way back I pick them up. Yes, so managing the riders' expectations and letting them know that the marshal's car is available. Typically, if I have someone else marshalling in my place, I'll give them my bike rack. So that option is there. He can pick up 2-3 riders at least. But again, as I said, marshalling is critical. I think Derek also, once he was marshalling BRF 1000, he had a rider DNF on him. So he just said, you gotta wait there, I have riders coming to the control point, I need to clear them first. After he cleared them, he went and picked up that rider. So people can't throw fits, or else, yes, I've informed riders, okay, this is your location, there's a bus station 5 kilometers away, take rest, move to that bus station, pick up a bus and take the bus home. That's it. Because the rider DNF'd in the first 80 kilometers, I still had 120 kilometers and 3 control points to clear. It was a complex route with multiple control points in just BRM 200. And this is the hilltop control points that I was talking about. So there was no way, I could go pick him up and then still make it to the control points in time.
Also, if you have so many DNF, then you cannot pick up all of them.
Yeah.
वैसे भी ये वो सब कुछ सोच के ही DNF कर रहे हैं, बैन कर ही रहे हैं
So typical things that I asked my ride marshals to carry. Over a period of time, we've developed a first aid kit that I just hand to the ride marshal. It's a duffel bag with basic amenities in it. So in the event of minor issues that you can just take care yourself. So the first aid kit is available. We'll give them a batch of electrolytes, bananas or energy bars that they can help out to the riders on the control points. A floor pump. Typically riders will have flat and there's only so much they can pump up their tires with their portable pumps. So floor pump always helps, especially with the gauge. So, and again, these are typical things that the marshal can have available with him and give to the riders at control points. Water, and of course all the ride marshal packet that I always prepare with the control sheets, clipboard, rubber stamp to stamp the brevet cards. Coming to the finish line, a finish point may be manned or unmanned. I typically advise to leave it unmanned, frankly. Again, your initial first few events, you might have big finish receptions and all, but you're not expected to do that, especially many rides have a, if you look at the control sheet, it's a very wide open timing and you really cannot man a finish point for 8 hours. That a finish point is not marked by a line or a point. You're expected to go 50 meters, 100 meters away, find a vendor with a computerized bill print that will have the dated timestamp, and we accept that. Yes, that's an acceptable form to prove that you reached the finish point at so and so time.
If an ATM doesn't have a slip, can they take a photograph of that and selfie and WhatsApp it?
See, for finish line, since this slide is on the finish line,
Okay, but
I am suggesting that you should pick the finish point in such a place, location that has this option. I don't advise selfies, maybe you can rely on as an absolute backup, especially during that demonetization period. ATMs ran out of slips also to print on my finish point. So there will be such force majeure conditions where you'll have to accept selfies, but see, selfies are something that stays in somebody's cell phone or even that WhatsApp group, they might share it on. And
the selfie is only in the event that no other thing is there.
that should be your absolute final resort. Don't plan your route and your ride keeping selfies in mind, or they'll just snap the selfie and that's good enough. Another thing a lot of organizers are not aware of, that when you transmit a photograph through WhatsApp, WhatsApp removes the geotag and the dated timestamp. You cannot verify the genuinity of a photograph sent through WhatsApp. You must ask them to email it to you. Okay. Even if the landmark may be there,
So they may have taken the day before.
So what they do is,
Yeah.
of course, they put it on WhatsApp.
And just have you
even
put
if
it
landmark
on
is there, it could be a Photoshop image.
Also,
what in Hyderabad we used to do, see it, the video live, and we should not. This way, after you come back, suppose in between, on checkpoint, suppose you might have come image.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing. Again,
as
only to be used as a last resort. You must design your routes.
Yeah.
Again, that is something I'll cover in my next presentation on creating a new route, guidelines on creating a new route. This I'll cover on that. Yeah, how to set and select a control point, how to set and select a finish point. Why I insist for such a thing.
also the selfie works only if you know the rider. If you don't know the rider's face, we had a situation once on where there was some a block in the highway and the control car could not go ahead. So only the riders could get ahead of that point to the control point. It was a turnaround point. So we had no choice but to tell them that to go there, this is the extra restaurant and so everybody sent selfies, group selfies, 7 of them, 6 of them, and said to cross verify, like, who are these people?
Another accident.
So the selfie thing is only in vacation.
Yeah, fine, but you should definitely have the rider number in the license.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't have that. Anytime they don't send it to that, they just send the photograph.
Yeah.
Then you already try to figure out who it is.
It's a non-standardized format. Basically, what I'm trying to say is it's a non-standard format. So, best thing is to set control points and finish points at, let's say, a restaurant. So, even if the ride marshal has to move from the control point in the event of an emergency, riders can still get to the control point
take a food bill, just buy a bottle of water. That will give you a invoice with the date and time on it, and that proves you came to that point. So while people may think, oh, selfie has the rider in it, but no, I'd rather trust the food bill than a selfie. Yeah. That's proper documentation which I have, which I'll attach to the brevet card also.
See, we all, in any case, all these things can be manipulated. Your credit card can be sent to somebody else to swipe over there. I mean, if they want to, they can do this. So these are not foolproof things to prevent cheating.
But many of the ATMs across villages, half of the time it doesn't produce any mistake. We have a control point in peaceful Achirapa. So half of the time the ATM will not be loaded with any
So
mistake.
that's why the good idea to have 2-3 ATMs.
Yeah, so
Usually
you should set a control point in such a way where there is some fallback arrangement. Okay, so there is one ride we have. There was the turnaround point. We've talked to a shop vendor over there. There were just 4 registrations for that ride. So I could not warrant a ride marshal. I did not have a volunteer also to marshal that ride. I was also out of town that weekend. For the 4 riders, I kept the ride. I found someone to at least flag off the ride on my behalf. And the riders took the rubber stamp at that point from the shopkeeper. That's allowed. I know the guy. I called him ahead. There will be 4 riders coming. You need to stamp it, put the date and time. And that validates the brevet card. So,
given a hotel stamp and ask them, so they have 24-hour checking this.
their own stamp. That's, it's not necessary.
So if a big place is okay, sometimes small places.
In Bhuj, we had one control point like this, small settlement, nothing fancy. But that guy has his own one small rubber stamp. We called ahead and told him, in case the rider shows up before the ride marshal, just stamp the card.
A common problem in Tamil Nadu after 11 o'clock, all the shops on the highway are closed.
So again, that goes to route design. That goes to route design. You need to. We have one route in Baroda. It's a BRM 300. We've set the control point in such a way that the people get out of the forest reserve area by 8:30 p.m. So that, because if they take it too easy and they hang around in that area too long, cell phones don't work in that area. It's a ghati area. There's no shop, no ATM, nothing in that entire. So we set the control point out of the forest reserve on the other side, and the closing time is such that they've cleared that area by that time. So again, this goes back to route design. You need to pick a route in that manner. If you feel there is barren desert for 200 kilometers. Yeah.
Then you have to manage,
Right. So, yeah, the guidelines for the route I'll discuss in my presentation tomorrow. Post-ride, moment your ride is over, tally all the collected brevet cards, have a very clear deadline, especially if it's an unmanned finish point. Often club reps will be waiting to upload results because a couple of brevet cards are not yet submitted. Be firm on the deadline for submission of brevet cards. We advise on our side as part of the rules that within 3 days, riders should submit. Within 3 days of the end of the ride, rider should submit his or her brevet card to the ride organizer. Yeah. So if it's an unmanned finish, make sure within 3 days you have all the brevet cards. If someone didn't submit, just go ahead and upload the results. Yeah. Just review if there are any complaints. from riders, especially common complaints that you may need to consider. Maybe the finish point had some issues. The last 10 kilometers there was some traffic accident because of which riders could not get through. But something that affected all the riders or most of the riders. Yes. So again, if you read the rules and the guidelines, there is provision for riders to appeal to the ride organizer, and there has to be genuine cause for you to consider those. So those are the kind of complaints that you would have to review after a ride is over. In case any riders or volunteers or officials complain to you about any cheating that may have happened on the ride, so post-ride you would have to do some investigation, collect evidence, and report those issues to AIR. Very important. That last bit, I've come across one or two emails where one ride organizer is saying that please ban this rider. He was also caught cheating in the other brevet in the other city. But the earlier cheating case never got reported to me. So in one email, that one rider's 3 cases of cheating have been reported to me together by the last ride organizer for the latest ride. So that's unacceptable.
In case you let something pass, it will become a problem for your fellow organizers. Because all the riders can ride anywhere and they do.
Yeah. Especially since now we have this unifying portal, they can register for another ride with another ride organizer. So that's very essential. You need to report it to us. Yeah, please don't take it in your hands or okay, this is one chance, let us go. No, we ourselves have a review system in place. We will also give you that understanding in certain situations how to deal with that. So that will go on a case-to-case basis. You may have received a complaint from a fellow rider. So whether that is actionable complaint or what you could do to find out or further investigate, all that kind of guidance also we'll give you. So that's why it's important to report to us. So we'll point you in the right direction if needed, or if it's an action that has to be taken on our end, we'll take that action. Once you clear complaints and reporting cheating cases, if any, you have to go ahead and upload all the results on the AIR site. We'll cover certain typical issues faced in uploading results in our tech presentation. And once you submit to the AIR site, now we have this new online payment gateway system. So the site, as soon as the homologation is done, the site will also generate your dues, which is also visible on the club dashboard. So the next step obviously is to clear that payment. I'm sorry? Yeah. Some things I'll go over now though. During your results upload, there is an option available to adjust your start time. If for any unavoidable reason you had to start 15 minutes late, or I had a very specific request from all the riders because we set the calendar a year in advance for the entire season. So local Baroda municipal elections were set on a certain date, and the riders requested that we'd like to be back in time to cast our vote. By 6 p.m. was the closing time for that, and all the riders requested. So I preponed the start time by an hour so that people could be back in time to cast their votes. That's a reasonable request. That's an acceptable reason why the start time would have changed on event day. So we do give you that option on the result submission page to adjust the start time. So you will fill out the same finish time, actual finish times, and just adjust the start time in common, so you don't need to sit and calculate time taken for everyone separately. The portal will calculate that for you. Finish time, you have to enter it in 24-hour format. Please make sure it's not AM PM system. Yeah. Late finishers, often I get this frequent issue for, especially for the newer ride responsibles unfamiliar with the portal. They'll try to enter the timing also for the late finisher, and then the system is giving them an error in submission. If it's a late finish, you just mark it as LF and leave the timing as same D1000. The timing you leave it as default, don't touch that. Just mark them as a LF so that the portal will also reflect them as a late finisher only. You don't enter their actual finish time as D4, 11 AM or anything like that. Yeah. Another typical issue we face, results get submitted to us with the medal status still as YTC. Please mark it as yes or no. If some riders did not confirm to you, then switch them to no and submit the result. Don't wait too long. Don't hold the results again for collection of medal fee. Give some reasonable deadline and then close it and submit the results in a timely manner. Mark DNS and DNF correctly. Yeah, I've had riders writing to me directly that on their dashboard they see a DNF and then say, yes, I registered for this ride, but I didn't actually go do this ride. I had some emergency travel, work related issue, so I couldn't participate. But why am I getting a DNF? So organizers have filled out the result, and then for the remaining people, by default they've made them DNF. Don't do that. It matters to the riders, because whatever result you enter and submit to us, that's how their result appears on the individual rider's dashboard as well. The rider gets that entire list of their entire riding list of every event that they've registered for, whether they DNS, they DNF, they finished in how much time, what is the homologation number. So please enter accurate results. Very important.
Such cases can be rectified at your place, because that is not that is called in such case, example you have to adopt. Can be rectified at your level?
They can, but it's a different effort.
Laborious process.
To the
Laborious. Right to them. But such cases.
In case अगर कोई अप्लाई नहीं करता, बाद में रिक्वेस्ट करता है कि मेरे को मदद चाहिए, उसके लिए क्या ऑप्शन है?
So we just start to play the idea.
No, I have a couple of more slides. Result submission. We are having a lot of delays in submission of results. In Q&A, once I open the floor for Q&A, please give me some feedback. What issues are you really facing in submission of results, so we'll see what kind of solution to come up with. But otherwise, please do try to submit results within 2 weeks. Again, this 2-week margin is given from our end because keeping in mind we give you the facility to organize an organizer right up to 2 weeks after an event. That's the only reason why we are actually waiting for 2 weeks. Otherwise, you're expected to submit results promptly. So Now, moving on to the organizer ride, some basic guidelines. So, apart from the actual event itself, we have this concept of an organizer ride. Yeah, you can organize only one organizer ride, which will be either pre or post. You can't have two organizer rides, one pre, one post, or two pre-organizer rides or two post-organizer rides. Any issues? Yeah, so you can only organize one organizer ride per event. Yeah. Most important, this is a facility for organizers and officials. Yeah, this is not something, a facility to be abused to change your event date. Yeah, it's a facility for organizers. You may have your hands full on the event day, so you are yourself marshalling the ride, you are officiating, so or you might genuinely be busy, but because you're doing all this, you're organizing the breves, you're the club rep, or the ride responsible, for your efforts, you are given this option. Right? This is a privilege for officials. Of course, if you are riding the organizer ride all by yourself, you are permitted to bring a friend. But limit the numbers. We got one intimation with 12 riders. I think Divya had to call them up. That 12 riders is...
No, I think 12 were registered and 15 were going for the
No. For the organizer ride, 12 people are going. That's not an organizer ride. If you as the ride responsible are yourself doing the organizer ride, you're allowed to bring one friend along. Yeah, don't go overboard, please. For the organizer ride, it has to be the same route. It may be on a different day.
Can we just ask a doubt on this matter? On an organizer ride, you mean only the official listen to the club representative and the ride?
Yeah. So the club rep, the ride responsible, it could be one of the volunteers who regularly volunteers for various events.
Some of the events, we have not done an organizer ride yet, but to ask, we may have volunteers in numbers. I mean, as you said, volunteers, are they allowed because they are mixing in different days?
if the volunteers are basically part of the Rangoli community and
Yes.
they are volunteers, they are riders who are volunteers,
Yes.
they may use this
So then, Raghu will go more than 12.
there will be more than 12.
So a longer ride will need more volunteers. 600.
We have more volunteers.
Yeah, but the example I gave you was, I believe, in that situation, more of people looking for an alternate date for the
It
ride.
is not that.
So that is that.
was not the case.
Uh-huh.
राइडर 65 राइडर्स थे वो
Okay.
और 200 300 400 था उसमें हमारे को 4 चेक पॉइंट चाहिए थे
Okay.
सब में अलग अलग हमारे को वॉलंटियर्स चाहिए थे
Okay.
पर मैंने आर्ग्यू नहीं
So
किया था
again, it is a
But at the time that the name was set for the pre-ride, the only total
So-
number of registered riders
At-
was
at
actually the same.
at- at-
yeah. See, so that's what we spotted that there are 15 riders registered for the event and 12 are going for organizer ride. We are going to take issue with that. So see, if you see our guidelines also given on the website, I have said limit the numbers. I have not written here only exactly 4 people are allowed. Okay, we've not. So this is where again the organizer's discretion comes in. We are giving you all this discretion to you, but with the idea in mind that no second chances. This facility, yes, no advantage in terms of route, timings. It has to be the same route. Yeah. Also, you can't do an organizer ride on the pretext of route recce. If you're doing a route recce, that has to be separate. Once you're done with your route recce, you get submit your route. cannot convert it into a organizer ride that I rode that road, so my ride is over. Yeah. Prior intimation.
It's left to your discretion for the club representatives to okay.
Okay, that's possible. They will be registered as a list where once there are, the reason we said that send all the volunteers to Pune. The reason is once there are few very enthusiastic riders who would like to volunteer, but they don't want to miss the chance of.
Right.
Let's say you have 120 riders on event day, which warrants 10 volunteers at the various control points. In that situation, if all those 10 riders need to be riding, they don't want to miss that ride. Okay, in that very unique situation, but then again, that is something you need to look at case to case basis. That's why I put these guidelines on this slide here, that it is not meant as to be used as an alternate date, that okay, you know what, I have a business trip this weekend, so I'll do the organizer ride with you guys.
No, that's not.
Yeah.
We consider volunteers only those.
Yeah. So what you are saying is in line with my guidelines here, that those people are volunteering or on regular basis volunteering. So that is a privilege given for organizers and officials of your club.
We also include, so supposing for example, I have volunteered at the library and then I want to do it within the next 2 weeks or something. I open it out, I want company, I open it out first to the officials group, whether they're right responsibles or volunteers in the group, that then if you want to join me, even if that person has not volunteered at this specific venue, because all of us in the officials group are regularly volunteering. So, okay for us to do. We had one situation recently where Prashant, who is regularly volunteering as a driver, wanted to organize a ride, and 2 riders were insisting that they be allowed to join in. They don't volunteer.
They are on a group of officials,
They're on a group, but they've not actually done anything. They're in that group, but they've not really done anything. And they were insisting that they should be allowed to join in because on the weekend of the brevet, they were going to be busy. If you're going to be busy and you're not going to be volunteering, and it's not like you volunteered in the last brevet. You're not
You should
coming
pertain to
from.
those riders who have volunteered in the last
Generally it is for that particular brevet you do 3 or 4. But because we are a volunteer organization, what we are looking at here is that somebody who is a contributor to the system is given a little leeway to come and join the ride, even if they are not contributed at this specific one. They contributed generally throughout the year. They are contributing. It's okay.
This is one currency you have.
But these 2
that
riders
you can
who are
offer
not
to officials.
contributing, so they're doing for their personal thing. So you can just say no, it's okay. Don't
So let us summarize this, that if there is a volunteer who is a regular volunteer who is not volunteering for this particular brevet and not
Particularly
volunteers contributing to us, but let us not make it as a big.
Yeah,
but see,
you
again-
already got 10 people.
Yes, if you've already got
Then now one more who is
That's not- yeah,
then if you know, then you are now you're
Take a
actually-
logical,
Yes.
with this vision.
In my case, these 2 riders were insisting to assist me on a free ride.
See, I once
One
had.
rider was basically interested in this free ride just to increase his mileage.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because he couldn't do it that day.
See,
It's your
I-
individual need, not
On my organizer ride, I had a neighboring club rep. Surat is now represented by Akhilesh and a couple others, but earlier there was another guy. He was mostly marshalling his events. So he, rather than organize his own solo organizer ride, Surat is close to Baroda. So I was having an organizer ride. So he came and joined our team of 3 riders. So that kind of facility also you can extend to a neighboring club rep.
There has also been a situation some years back, this was I think Delhi, in which 2 or 3 of the volunteers who were actually helping at the brevet
point here. Only one ride. Only one ride, one organizer ride per event.
DNF on an organizer ride, we DNF.
No second chances.
We don't give riders a second chance.
If you do a pre-ride, if you do a pre-event organizer ride and you DNF, on event day you can't show up to do the ride again.
That's
Yeah.
why we say transparency. Let everybody know what you are doing, whether it's free or post. We've also had
Yeah, that's why here, maintain records. So, if I'm doing an organizer ride, then, draw the ATM slip at your start point 1 minute after 6 a.m., for example. Just to prove that you did not leave the start point before 6. Then if your finish is 7:30 p.m. again, going back to the route design, you would have designed the finish point where there is at least the availability or facility of an ATM. Draw the ATM slip there. Your control points also along the route also. Even if there is no control point per se, if you stopped along that route, you bought a bottle of water, you bought, you stopped at a dhaba on the highway to snack. Keep those bills with you. So those records.
Want to come and support you by coming to the start line or the finish line. So we have some of our riders. They're going on their early morning ride. They know that officials are starting the ride. They'll come and take photographs of us, see us, fancy us off. Some of them will come to receive us at the finish.
So that transparency.
Not for this. Previous one. Can a ride control point be manned as well as unmanned?
So that's what I say. You must design a control point in such a way that it can be both manned and unmanned. Because if you, again, I'll cover this in my route design tomorrow, guidelines for designing a route. Prior intimation via email, you must inform us that you're going to do an organizer ride. So we were able to point out your issue because you gave us an intimation. That's how. So if something is going on, also this gives certain level of transparency. So everybody is aware. Fellow organizers will also be aware that you're doing a organizer ride. That's how I got a neighboring club rep also to come and join on the organizer ride. It could be any number of things. Organizer ride results are to be uploaded on the same result page. It's not supposed to be treated as a separate event. Yeah, and for that reason, please ensure even the organizer ride should be flagged off at the same time. Everything has to be the same. If on event day your flag off time was 6 a.m., then your organizer ride should also be flagged off at 6 a.m. It cannot be 5:30 a.m. Convenient to you, or you had to drop the kids at.
That's on you. You block
Yeah.
time. You can't adjust your time.
Next slide. I think previous session we already covered BRN Popular. I open it up for Q&A. Yeah.
Related to what we discussed in this session.
Regarding medal, अभी किसी ने अप्लाई नहीं किया है, हमने अच्छी तरह किया इन्फॉर्मेशन दिया, फिर जो रिक्वेस्ट करता है तो उसमें क्या है?
So at present, we don't have a facility to accommodate for this, but we are hoping that first of all, last year that we were having a lot of issues with the metal supply. Once we sort that out completely, we're going to try to have a system within this lake in which a rider can then apply and we have to code his homologation number. We make sure that we have not already taken the metal and then directly. But this will take some time. At the moment, it is not. That's why they should just.
Yeah, but see, sometimes some of the complaints that I have received from riders directly is more to do with the communication. आप अभी बोल रहे हैं कि आपने अच्छे से inform कर दिया, but more often that has happened to riders who are not very savvy with WhatsApp. आपने middle fees payment का link WhatsApp पे share किया, वो बंदा है ही नहीं WhatsApp पे या स्मार्टफोन यूज ही नहीं कर रहा है, या one club used to have this habit of only posting it on their Facebook group. Yeah, I'm not a member of their cycling club Facebook group. I would have gone to their club and rode, I mean, as an outstation rider. So as a result, I never got informed of the payment link for the medal. So
there is a payment link for medal.
no,
In the
I'm
event
talking about
page-
the
No, I'm asking that on the website do we have
no, on the
there is
website for the
free
riders.
No, so what I'm saying is
Facebook event
page
page.
there is-
So what? See, there is another way also here. On the AIR event page, you are only reporting what is the medal fee amount.
So that's
Okay.
what I'm saying is there's no link there. We've got a link for Facebook, we've got a link space for other things. So we put up a link for the medal so that it is one place that the riders can find all the information, which is what
Okay. But yeah, you will then have issues where riders are paying in advance the medal fees. That should not happen.
No, that can work. The homologation takes place with the members. So the link, you can, if it is a Mera event or Explana or whatever, you start the payment of the medal after the medal is over.
Yes.
The link can be pasted into the AIR event, but it will then send your reminders.
Right.
But central location there, that information should be there. Then something will reduce. But after the event itself, you can go.
Could you make a note of that, Divya?
That
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Divya.
open and finish date to decide karo and do it.
Right. Maybe this is just for us as a club or some others. What will we do with our medals which we have accumulated, which many people have not come and collect? In the last season before it became very organized.
So here I will be covering in my medal distribution issue. Okay.
Here are you talking?
I mean, after the new medal,
Yeah, no problem.
We have locked up with
We have the solution. Raghu
So I'll be covering in my medal distribution guidelines because see, as a club rep also you must understand in many situations you may be in metro city like Mumbai, club rep may be in Thane, the rider may be living in Kolaba. Person is not going to travel all the way just to collect the brevet card. You might have situations of outstation riders.
Now, if we are covering this entire topic as a separate topic, then
Yeah, tomorrow we are covering and we will be covering that issue. What how to follow that because based on those guidelines that I have been following, last 2 years I don't have a single brevet card or medal fee pending to distribute.
But one question.
Yeah.
Dinesh has.
Yes,
Go ahead,
yes.
go ahead.
Yeah. No, just 1 minute. Just let me just go over a couple of things.
Okay.
Then I will reopen the Q&A. So, one of the things that we, in your handbook, just understand that there are various sets of rules for brevet organizers. There is level 1 of rules which are laid out by Audax Club Perusil. This is the rules for riding in India. So there's various sets of rules here. You all need to be conversant with all of them. ACP defines. Hello. So ACP has their set of rules for riders. Likewise, Audax India, after some years of doing this, we kept entering some clauses which we get okayed by Audax Club Perusil that this rule is okay, and we add them. So we operate under 2 sets of rules, the riders operate under 2 sets of rules. Additionally, the organizers operate under 2 sets of rules also. The Audax Club Perusil, page 19, ACP rules and regulations for organizers. So this is what us as club representatives, we operate under these rules defined by ACP, and additionally then AIR also has a set of rules that we have devised for India over here. That is on page 21, which starts with the guiding principles and the qualifications and continues with additionally what you are required to do, etc. So just go through all these also. Tomorrow's afternoon Q&A session, if there are any doubts regarding this, you can. Sorry, I'll throw it back to the Q&A now. Just a minute, Akhilesh had a question.
Yeah, this is
Good.
regarding things we carry in, riders carry in safety vehicle. So
Okay.
that is accessible to CPs.
Yeah. So
So just the idea is, can he carry an entire bike, supplementary bike?
Yes.
yeah, but
With him, with
but he
everything-
can switch it only at the control point.
Everything is there.
Yeah.
It is only in control points. It is with tags. It is with lights. Everything as per our guidelines.
Right.
Can he carry an extra bike along with?
Yeah. So, but then when he mounts the new bike, that new bike should also be compliant with the bike check. Yes, rider number, front and back, front and tail lights. Yes. So all these requirements it should satisfy. Then he is permitted. Yeah.
Right. So whether 20 riders riding, एक के पास vehicle है, so the discussion of this extra bike comes
Right.
in. Why should he get that advantage? If my bike breaks down,
But no, every single one of those riders has the facility if they want to use it.
I mean, logically you should not be. If you have a breakdown and you can't repair your bike, you should just.
No, see, so the safety vehicle allows me to carry. I'm spending on my safety vehicle. I'm getting somebody else to do it. What we're doing here, what we're saying.
Facility is allowed for
Facility is
everyone.
available for
Anybody
everyone.
can.
You can't
It's
force
not a.
everyone.
It is a level playing field. Everyone is allowed to bring a safety vehicle on a particular route. And there is night
See,
ride.
why I ask
Because,
in that case,
because one of
they
the
need
things
I don't want someone
should
getting.
be
no, not in the master's car. His own safety vehicle as per the standard.
So my question was that, say you and I are riding and you are getting a vehicle, so I should also be allowed to keep my spare bike.
No,
in your-
the point here is that 101, can I answer? Defend 1 minute please. The point here is that 100% of your participants have the facility of bringing their own vehicle, their own bike, their own whatever they want. We have given a fair rule and a fair opportunity to everybody. Some use it, some don't. Those who don't use it, it's
Cannot claim
unfair.
unfair advantage there.
They have not taken unfair advantage.
See, you have 20 riders in a group. All 20 can bring their safety vehicle as
So
per the
safety
filling the
vehicles
form.
have, you have a form, you have
Exactly what is the next question should be, the more is the problem. See, what happens is for the organizer, suppose I am single, I don't have volunteers, right? I am allowing because there is a rule that every single rider can have a safety vehicle, right? But whether they are going to take advantage of the safety vehicle or
So this is where your organizer's discretion comes into play.
So what I do, blanket rule, I just don't allow other organizers. I just don't allow because I don't have the resources to follow or to scrutinize the rule.
That is why we say organizer's discretion.
No. Let me be very clear. It is on the organizer's discretion.
Yes.
You can refuse it based on the lack of infrastructure. You can't increase the problems and thereby start having no evidence of.
Yeah. If you have doubt that this rider is going to take advantage of the safety vehicle,
If I am not sure, I just want to.
you are in your right to refuse that facility. The facility is being given by you to bring the.
also have a situation. We also
Guys,
This thing is not
here are.
working. Hello. Okay, we've also had a situation where the organizers are strapped for infrastructure. There's only 5 or 10 riders. There's barely enough money to cover the fuel cost also. There are no volunteers. So in that case, somebody says, can I have my safety vehicle on the road? Like, yeah, sure, and we'll put one person in a safety vehicle and we'll use it. So you can do that as well.
We've done that. Organizers, stand for that safety vehicle.
Yeah.
Are volunteers inside the vehicle.
So that is provided in the rules also.
That vehicle will be
Yeah.
the organizer.
One request to everyone, please don't depart until I have just made the announcements for the evening.
And one more thing, we are talking about this extra cycle. The extra cycle can be used only if the original cycle is damaged or punctured, or you can change it because the terrain is changed.
That's really left to you. I mean, you can have anything in the car, but access that item in the car, be it a raincoat or a bike or a tire or a tube, only at the control point.
So basically, if somebody wants to have a mountain biking site, they can keep it.
Yeah, no problem.
And one more thing about puncture, like a lot of times we'll have the if the puncture is on the road, if the support car, there is the organizer support car is going. If you put puncture for somebody, if you do the same thing for everybody, it is allowed or
If you can, if you have the capacity to, like we said.
because a lot of times what has happened is we're doing it.
Yeah, but then see, that is too much of support then. Again, going back to, it's really, you need to look at the situation, what are the conditions, under what scenario you are looking to provide that support to a rider. Going back to the spirit, it is a self-supported ride. Yeah, you're not here to convert the whole event into a support ride, you know.
And when you get weary after doing this for a little while.
Yeah, it's-
Sustainability in terms of this also.
Go ahead, Saurabh,
Make it
please,
something
we
that
want-
you can sustain for a long term.
So my question is like, sometimes what people do is they don't bring a support car or safety vehicle. Like it's a 200-kilometer ride.
Okay.
And they had some issue with their bike at 70 kilometer or 50 kilometer. They just called up someone and then they come and they give some like tires or tubes. Like it's
See,
at a
control point.
not a control point. So basically.
So then that's-
Yeah. So my point is this is basically kind of support again.
So then that's a DNF. That's a DNF. You can't, you're allowed your cell phone with you. That doesn't mean you have access. You can call for help.
Get it repaired roadside, it is fine. Also, safety because doesn't mean that everyone can put it anytime.
Yeah, so
It is the organizer discretion.
and
If the organizer feels that the road is not safe where they are going, then only they can allow it.
yeah.
So if there's
If I feel that
workshop on the way,
they ride anywhere in the night time also safe, then I don't need to allow.
so for the puncture, repair, this, that, if there's a bike shop on the way, they can go and get it done there. If the bike shop is like 5 kilometers inside also, away from the route, they can go do that and come back to the road. Because sometimes we have routes in Pune which go out, come back and then go somewhere else. And so, but they can't call up somebody and say, hey,
So I'll give you one example specifically. I'll give you one specific example. In my BRM 1000, one rider, Sunny Funds, in the first 60 kilometers itself, he had 4 flats. He was just having a tough day, poor chap. But we had informed, I think Rajkot, he got tubes, extra tubes from there. Which was a control point. So one of the riders there got a couple of tubes for him and gave it to him. And it was given to him at a designated control point. Right?
What is
So,
doing with this safety vehicle concept?
the safety vehicle concept has been put into place for safety.
That's exactly
See,
what
we
it
are-
was.
Not been excused that.
Exactly what I mean. Now it's still not.
People should not be
there are, see,
For that only it is.
Only India and South Africa, the safety vehicle is allowed.
yeah.
But what the discussion is going for support vehicle.
Yes.
Because the purpose of the safety vehicle. So my suggestion will be, it should not be allowed in any area.
Then I was going to it by this rule. Because of this rule, currently the more use of safety vehicles.
Make it exclusive for the illegal
Just give me a
rider.
second here. This vehicle, this what we are talking about, my mistake, I did not clarify. Vehicles, support vehicles are allowed under the ODAX club rules. Read the rules, they allow you to do it. The stipulation is that the vehicle cannot be on the same route as the brevet. So if you're doing a Pune to Kolhapur and back on the highway, your safety vehicle may not be on that road is the ODAX club rule. The ODAX club rule says you can have a car meet you at the control, but it cannot go on the same road as the rider. Okay? So even in PDP, the rider's route is laid out. People register their vehicles with them. The vehicles are given a completely different route to come and meet them at control points. Now in India, we don't have that kind of road network where you can have a control point and you are going to control point one way and the safety vehicle comes. In India, the safety vehicles will have to drive 200-300 kilometers more to come to the control points.
so ideal, most of these safety vehicles are driven by the drivers of that particular rider.
Correct.
Right. And the particular rule says that the vehicle distance has to be so and so with the lights.
Are there any more
It has
questions?
never been followed. The driver usually follows his boss. You know.
See, again, I think we are going in circles over the same issue. Let me again clarify very clearly here
Can we just
that,
make it only for
no, hold on. Please, just hear me out, okay? Safety vehicle policy is put in place because we have unsafe routes in this country. The policy is put in place as a blanket, okay? You may be living in a certain part of the country where all your routes are super safe, but I have to set a policy that covers the clubs nationwide and future clubs to join us. Please understand that. Yes? And this facility, for this facility, the organizer is given discretion. If you feel somebody is flouting the rules, yes, you can deny them this facility.
We have penalties also.
Yes, we have a penalty system. If you feel the rider did not follow the rule, you can DNF them. As you rightly said that you don't have the facility to monitor too many safety vehicles also. Don't extend that facility to the rider. If the rider shows up to the start line with a safety vehicle or in the middle of the ride you come to know, Arey, he has a safety vehicle. This has happened to me in the past. I have told the vehicle to turn back immediately, otherwise I am going to disqualify the rider right away. Prior intimation is essential. Yes? So, the policy is clear on all these things. Unnecessarily, I think we are going into circles. Oh, there is so much confusion. Safety can be used as support. But yeah, if they use it as a support vehicle instead of a safety vehicle, you have to DNF the rider. Yeah, and the policy is put in. Please don't propose that we should just scrap this policy. Sorry, if you don't want to provide this facility to your riders, that's your discretion. But we have set a policy in place for the country as a whole, all clubs, future clubs to come also. Yes?
Any other questions?